Welcome to the St. John's Clay Collective. I wanted to make a video about how to glaze in our space and how to get your work in the kiln, because I do get a lot of questions about that. So first off, I want to talk a little bit about bisque. Bisqueware. What is bisqueware? Bisque is clay that has been fired to 1900 degrees, and at that point it is molecularly altered. The molecularly bonded water molecules in the clay have been removed, and this is what you have left. It can no longer be clay. It will not be converted back to clay because it has been permanently changed. The unique property of bisque is what allows us to glaze so easily, because you notice as you're handling your bisqueware that your hands will get intensely dry, and that's because the bisque is trying to pull in moisture from wherever it can find it, including the oils out of your hands. So, but we need that property, that kind of pull in and holding moisture property, and that's what allows us to glaze more easily. Moving on, up here we have sponges, we have brushes, we have wax resist. I want to come down here. Here's our wax resist and our brushes. Let's get one, a nice big one. Alright, first off, you're going to get a 5-gallon bucket and fill it with a good amount of water. This is the water that you're going to use to wash your whisks, wash your bisqueware, and clean your brushes. All the glaze mess water is going to go down the sink, not into our closed water system. So first up, you're going to get a clean sponge, no clay or mess on this sponge, and you want it just damp, not dripping wet. Bisque, when it comes out of the kiln, as it sits on the shelf, it gets dusty, especially in a clay studio. We have a lot of dust. So what you're going to want to do is take a sponge and very lightly wipe it clean. Do not saturate this, because once this bisque becomes fully saturated, it makes it very difficult to glaze, and the glaze will want to slough off the surface because it doesn't have that absorbent property that we need in bisqueware that will allow us to glaze easily. So you're going to take a lightly damp sponge and wipe all the dust off. The reason we're cleaning our bisque is to help prevent a phenomenon or a fault called crawling, and that's when the glaze has trouble adhering to the surface of the pot and will kind of pull away from the surface, and you'll get these bare patches. So washing your bisque helps prevent that, helps prevent crawling. So quick word about wax. Wax resist is a tool. It's used for helping clean up the bottom of your pots. It is not essential for everything that goes in the kiln. It is not a fail-safe. Just because there's wax on the bottom of your pot doesn't mean you don't have to take a sponge and also wipe any glaze droplets or wipe it clean. When to use wax. You don't need to use wax on everything. If you notice on the foot of this pot, there's not very much surface area. It's a very small foot. So I could easily, once I've glazed this, I could easily take my sponge and clean it, and it's done, and I've wasted very little glaze. With a cup or the pot like this, where the surface, the bottom is flat and it's large, I would like to wax this, because if I dip it, the glaze is going to slough off the bottom. It's going to save a lot of time later when I'd have to clean this surface, and it's going to save a lot of glaze that would normally get washed away. But the thing you should know about wax, you have to handle it with a great deal of care, because little droplets or wax that gets on your hands, be very careful that your hands stay clean, because if it gets on your fingers and then you touch your pot, where that wax winds up, it can either be sanded off or it has to be fired off in the kiln. It's not going to wash off. So we have to handle this material with a great deal of respect. Please use it on these plastic tables, not over on the canvas. And with wax, you don't need many layers. Just one thin layer is plenty. You don't need to layer this up. And what I'm going to do is just put a very thin layer all around the bottom. And you can see where I've gone over it again and there's already wax. It's starting to pill up and pile up. I need to be careful of those. And I might also go around the side of my pot, because in order to get your work in my kilns here at the collective, you need to wash your pot a good 1/2 inch to 1/4 inch up the side. That is, looking at it in profile from the shelf, going up the side of the pot. That has to be completely glaze free. So if the glaze runs, it won't stick to the shelf and it won't damage the shelf, and more importantly, it won't damage your pot. You don't want to have to scrape off glaze that has run down your pot and stuck to the shelf. So I'm going to be very careful that this is nice and dry before I set it down or before I handle it on the bottom. Now I have a waxy brush. I have to wash this with very hot water. You want to make sure you get all this wax out. The only way to do it is with hot water. If you don't wash it well, we can be flying through the brushes here. They go bad really fast if they're not well taken care of. So please set this off to the side and be sure to wash it in very hot water once you're ready to clean up.